Excessive application of fertilizer also demarker the soil toughness and turn very acidic and nutrientless. Hence, the cycle of using more chemical begins. So for the next one, work-related disease for chemical hazard. Taking care of the plant in the palm oil production means the sum of the chemical used to control weeds and grasses include glyphosate, isopropylamine formulas in a solid, liquid or tablet form. Inhalation of this herbicide can lead to mild gastrointestinal upset if swallowed, and skin and eye irritation which may be permanent, and irritation of the respiratory tract include sore throat. Chronic exposure may reproduce neurological effect and behavioral and motor change, oxidative stress change in mitochondrial activity, and inflammation of the nervous system. So for the next one is instrument and measurement for chemical hazard. So the instrument that we measure the chemical hazard in the area sampling. Purpose of this sampling is to measure area that exposed to chemicals such as storage room for chemical and mixing area. So and it also can help us to detect if any leak in the storage room for chemical. If we using this kind of sampling, and it can also measure effect from the mixing area. So sometimes worker before during pesticide they are mixing the chemical before they spray to the crops and ground. So for the personal sampling, the purpose is to measure exposure for worker that exposed to chemical during their work. So this is gas detector. And the lastly is suggestion for chemical hazards. So to ensure safety when handling chemicals, employer must firstly provide training to ensure employees are trained on the proper handling of chemical for safe and efficient use. Secondly, supply appropriate PPE or proper PPE to protect them from exposed to chemical, such as safety goggles, face shield, chemical resistant glove, and they need to wear the full sleeve shirt and full length pant and chemical resistant boots. And thirdly, ensure proper ventilation. Worker mixing glyphosate, isopropylamine should work in well ventilated area or open area so the concentration of the chemical can be reduced. If ventilation is poor, respirator with pesticide cartridge should be used to prevent inhalation from that chemical. So for the fourth one is maintain PPE. Ensure the PPE is properly maintained and in a good condition before using during their work. And lastly, regular training and monitoring. Provide ongoing training and monitoring the correct use of PPE for safety compliance. And also when we use the chemical measurement, we have to hire the CHRA, or we call it as chemical risk assessor, because they have competent to do the job. So that's all for me. Thank you.
So my topic is psychological hazard. The related hazards in the oil palm industry are such as the oil palm industry presents a range of psychological hazards that stem from the demanding nature of the work and challenging conditions. Stress and burnout are prevalent as plantation workers often endure long hours, physically intensive tasks, and limited opportunities for rest. The other one is social isolation is another major hazard, as plantations are typically in remote areas where workers live far from family and friends. This physical distance can lead to a sense of loneliness, lack of emotional support, and disconnectedness from personal lives, applying feelings of isolation, and they will become like more distant from the surrounding. Job insecurity also affects workers' mental health since many in the industry experience limited job stability, low wages, and lack of career advancement. Yeah, which can create a sense of vulnerability and insecurity. Such conditions underscore the importance of addressing psychological hazards within the oil palm industry to create a healthier, more supportive workplace environment. The source of work hazard are such as the primary sources of psychological hazards in the oil palm industry stem from a combination of environmental and organizational factors. The remote locations of many oil palm plantations often mean that workers live in isolated communities with limited access to services, social activities, or family interactions. This isolation can lead to significant stress and strain, mainly as workers find themselves removed from the social support systems they would otherwise rely on. In addition, the structure of work in the industry contributes to psychological strain. Workers typically engage in monotonous, repetitive tasks like harvesting and pruning, which can lead to feelings of boredom, mental fatigue, and lack of engagement with their work. Working conditions such as exposure to extreme weather, inadequate housing, and minimal healthcare services also contribute to the psychological strain. Combined with lack of autonomy and control over daily tasks, these factors create a challenging and often mentally exhausting work environment that serves as a source of psychological hazard for plantation workers. The risk factors of psychological hazards are such as are varied and multifaceted. One significant factor is the physical demand of work, which leads to physical and mental exhaustion. Long working hours, sometimes extending beyond a typical 8-hour workday, are common in the industry, creating a physical strain and exacerbating mental fatigue. So it's like they have been working too long and it will lead to mental stress. Another risk factor is job insecurity. Many workers are employed on a seasonal or contractual basis, meaning they face uncertain employment prospects. This precariousness can heighten stress, especially when workers depend on the income of their families and livelihood. If they cannot work, it will be more stressful because they don't have a job and they don't have a source of income. So how can they support their family, right? So next, environmental factors such as extreme heat, humidity, and other harsh weather conditions further the risk of mental strain. Additionally, workers often have limited resources and opportunities for career advancement, which can lead to feelings of entrapment and lack of motivation. Collectively, these risk factors increase the likelihood of experiencing psychological hazards as workers are constantly managing both physical and mental stressors in their roles. For example, in extreme heat, it's like if the weather is too hot, they will get exhausted and like keep sweating, so they will get stressed easily and they won't be able to cool down. But yeah, the work related diseases for this hazard are such as the psychological hazards in the oil palm industry can result in range of work related diseases that affect both mental and physical health. Anxiety and depression are among the most common mental health conditions experienced by plantation workers due to ongoing stress and isolation. Workers facing constant strain and limited support may also experience sleep disorders like insomnia, which is worsened by the physical exhaustion from long hours and the mental strain from isolation and job insecurity. Substance abuse, such as alcohol, is another work-related disease that can develop when workers turn their coping mechanisms to manage stress. Like sometimes, like alcohol, some people drink alcohol in order to reduce stress, and that's not the right way, but they still do it. The lack of mental health resources within plantation mean that workers are often left without the necessary support, increasing the risk of mental health conditions becoming chronic. So chronic is like long-term disease that is harder to cure than acute diseases. So it may take a longer time to cure it. Sometimes it cannot be cured too. The prevalence of these work-related diseases underscores the importance of psychological support systems and proactive mental health care in the industries to mitigate these health risks. So, moving on to another point of instrumentations and measurement of psychological hazards. Measuring psychological hazards in the oil palm industry requires a combination of assessment tools and approaches to adequately capture the mental strain experienced by workers. Sorry for the background. Psychological assessment tools such as the General Health Questionnaire (GHQ) and the Depression Anxiety Stress Scales (DASS) are effective in gauging mental health status by asking workers to reflect on symptoms and emotional states. These assessments can provide a structured approach to identify levels of stress, anxiety, depression among workers in the workplace. Observational studies and interviews can also serve as useful instruments, allowing researchers or health professionals to gather qualitative data on workers' psychological conditions by directly observing work conditions and speaking with workers about their experiences. Additionally, wearable technology that monitors physical exertion and heart rate variability (HRV) can offer insights into stress levels as they relate to physical strain, providing an indirect measure of mental well-being. Together, these tools allow for comprehensive view of psychological hazards, enabling organizations to develop targeted interventions. So, for the last point is suggestions and recommendations. Addressing psychological hazards in the oil palm industry requires a multifaceted approach that includes organizational, environmental, and psychological support initiatives. First, the first suggestions are such as companies should work towards improving the work-life balance of plantations workers by implementing regulated work hours, mandatory breaks, and work rotation systems to prevent burnout. So this is to give the workers enough rest so they still have the energy to continue the work when they need to. So the second one is to provide access to psychological support such as on-site counseling services or mental health hotlines can offer workers immediate assistance when experiencing mental strain. So whenever they feel down, they can ask for help there and they can receive mental health support and motivation to continue the work. Creating a supportive community environment is also crucial. Companies should establish recreational facilities, holding social events, and encourage teamwork to help alleviate feelings of isolation and foster a sense of belonging. It is equally important to conduct regular mental health education and stress management training for workers, equipping them with skills to cope with psychological strain, so they won't feel lonely